BecomeYourSeed.net. It's the station.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Mental Health Talk with yours truly. I am Christina McIntyre. I hope that y'all had the best week that you could. And remember, today is a new day. So, whatever you couldn't get done last week, don't worry about it. Just focus on now and moving forward. First, give a shout out to my sponsor, Flawless Tires. You can find them at 1195 Chester Pike. Make sure you stop by and hit them up for your car services. Also, if you're interested in being a sponsor, you can always inbox me. Definitely will be on top of promotion and on social media especially. So definitely feel free to hit me up and we can sit down and discuss that. Also, don't forget to visit my website, www.becomeyourseed.com. Make sure you go check it out. I talk about our mental, our emotional, our physical, and our spiritual. I also have chakra bracelets and necklaces on sale there as well. Also, follow me on Instagram, Become Your C. I share poetry on there. Also, you can follow me on TikTok now at Become Your C. What did I leave out? And also YouTube. YouTube is BYC, Become Your C, to stay up to date on all my latest podcasts. So, oh, and also download the Live 365 app to listen on Sundays at 12 p.m., Wednesdays and Fridays at 2 p.m., and search cmpradio.net. This week, I wanted to talk about mental health as it is in relation to children. I think a lot of times, as adults, we just worry about ourselves, mainly, the adult situation as it pertains to mental health, and we tend to forget about our children, but our children are suffering as well, and a lot of times children are suffering in silence, especially if you don't have that relationship with your parents. You're afraid to discuss things that's going on, and a lot of times children have no idea what's going on. They react off of impulses and their emotions and stuff because they're not able to deal with emotions like adults do. A lot of us have trouble dealing with our own emotions in a um, good way, but we expect children to be able to handle their emotions, right? When children do express anger and sadness and stuff, we tell them a lot of times to just suck it up, or we yell at them more than we sit there and try to understand them. So I wanted just to give shine some light into children. That way, if we see some of these signs and behavior patterns, we can get them help as soon as possible. A lot of times, children do not get diagnosed properly, and so they grow into adulthood, and something that could have been resolved when they were a child carries it on, and now as an adult, the problem is worsened when it could have been handled back then. By just paying attention to your children. I know a lot of us are busy, we work, most of our children either go to school or daycare. When we have limited time with our children, and especially if they're hyperactive, we tend to tell them go sit down, go to their room, go do something else, and they're suffering by themselves. And sometimes children create imaginary friends to cope with their their feelings and stuff like that. And definitely, it's hard to tell your parent how do you feel because you don't even have the words. Their vocabulary isn't there to be able to express themselves the way that they ought to. So please pay attention to your children. I know like life is consuming. You're working, you're trying to build, you're trying to do these things, but it's important that we give our children the attention that they need so that they can thrive and become a good person for themselves and also society too. Um, for children, mental health issues, it classifies as the way they learn, behave, and handle their emotions. And so, if they have issues doing so, that's when mental health illnesses can arrive. And a lot of causes of mental health issues in children, most of it is hereditary. So, if you have a parent or brother or sister that has mental health issues, most likely that child will develop those same issues or a variation of it. It could be biological, it could be psychological, right? Such as neglect, abuse, and loss. And loss is such as, a parent may have died young, or a grandparent may have died young, or someone close to them they have lost. Or it could be a pet as well, right? If they had a pet that they had since they were born, and then all of a sudden the pet had passed away, they can suffer as well. And then environmental stress as well, especially last year when the pandemic happened. Us as adults, we were so worried about we got to get ourselves right, but neglecting the fact that our children suffer as well. They were isolated from their friends. Their routine was disrupted by the pandemic, and so um, a lot of children behaviors started to get worsened because of that, and we didn't put two and two together, right? And so for me, I started paying attention because I do have an 8-year-old son, how his behavior changed from the previous year and throughout last year, and it did get worse. And then in the beginning, I couldn't understand it, and then it wasn't until this year had to sit down with myself and figure out what was going on. And we tend to blame children for their behaviors because we don't want to look at ourselves as parents. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some children that we label as bad. They are, some children can have the best parents and they still turn out the way they do. I'm just saying, as parents, I think we need to take a step back and look at ourselves of how we parenting, and maybe sometimes we're used to how we were raised, right? Maybe our parents used spanking as a form of discipline, and if um, we didn't do what they say, they use that, and so we try to raise our children that same way, and it doesn't work, right? We have to realize that every child is different, and every child doesn't respond to the same form of discipline like we did. Like I know growing up before my dad had passed away, um, I used to get spankings. My one brother used to get spankings. My sisters, they were a little bit better than we were, so we didn't have to get that as well. Did it damage me? I don't think so. I think, we needed it at that time. So you have to know your child and know what they need and what type of discipline they need. For me, I try to limit spanking. Now, I do choose that when it's necessary. So you got to find that line when it's necessary, and then when it comes to abuse. If you find yourself having to spank your child every day or using words and things to demean them, that's a form of abuse as well. You may want to take a step back and see what you could do to be a more effective parent. What I realized with my son, I started to look at myself as a parent and see what I could do better. I didn't realize I was raising my voice more than necessary. When something was affecting me, I kind of, raised my voice, and I put it on him, which is not fair. And I think a lot of times, us as parents, we're stressed out, and so unfortunately, our children are the bearer of that, or stress, and it's not fair to them. And so, what I started doing is I take a step back. If I know that I had a frustrating day or something is bothering me, I don't react like I used to. a form of discipline. Now, don't get me wrong. If your child is not acting the way they're supposed to, there's other forms of discipline that you can do. You can do timeouts. You can take things away. Um, you can do things that's not going to kind of harm them in the long run. I do believe in discipline, but I believe that if you do it all the time, it can create an issue in a child. And that issue is that, oh, if someone makes me angry, I have a right to put my hands on them. And that's what I'm trying to change the the way that I interact with my son. And so I had to kind of learn him and learn myself too in the process. Like I know that I could be a better parent. And so in order for him to change, I had to change myself as well. And I think we as parents, we are so used to doing things our way. We want that child, well, they're going to do what I say when I say it. Every child doesn't respond to that type of um, language and tone. So definitely learn your child, learn what works for them. And you can have multiple children, and each child will need a different form of discipline, especially if their behavior is out of control. And then you need to sit down and have conversations with them and ask them, how they feel and stuff like that. My son was going through a lot of stuff, a lot of changes started happening after he started kindergarten, and I didn't understand it at first, and within the last few months, I started having sit downs with him, talking to him, asking him how he feel. He was using certain words he didn't know the meanings to them, right? So it's important to have conversations with your children and set time for your children. I know we're busy and we do certain things, but if we can make time for other things, we definitely need to make time for our children. They are important. We're raising children to go out there to be, good citizens, and we want to make sure that we set that good foundation at home, because that's where they learn first, right? They learn first at home, and so they're going to react off of what we teach them. I know for me, I suffer from mental health issues, and it's important that I pay attention to my son. Um, I've have OCD, and I didn't realize how much my son was watching me with my OCD behavior, so I kind of had to change that because I saw that he was picking up the pattern. And I know that since I suffer from mental health issues and my family does as well, that he is prone to suffering as well. So I have to make sure that I give him the time that he needs to pay attention to those signs and stuff so that I can prevent it. Right now, we have a plan in place to get him on track because he does suffer from ADHD. I seen signs of anxiety in him as well. And so I had to change the way I had to deal with him. And it is a work in progress, right? It's not going to be an overnight thing. And I think we expect children to be able to handle things like we do as adults, and they can't. Their mind is not that developed yet. And I think we need to learn how to be more patient with our children and meet them where they're at and meet them at their level because they're not where we're at. We as adults sometimes can't handle ourselves, and so how do we expect children to handle themselves as well? Um, there are about 5 or 6 um, common behavior issues in children that developed: anxiety disorders, ADHD, autism, eating disorders, depressions and mood behaviors, and PTSD and schizophrenia. Now, schizophrenia is one of them things that's not really diagnosed with children under 12. They usually don't until they're after 12, but they can show signs of it. So definitely pay attention to your children and see if they display any signs. Um, and signs of schizophrenia in children is being paranoid and they have strange ideas. Um, some of the symptoms of mental health issues in children are persistent sadness. So if you have a child that is, you notice that is sad all the time, they're not never happy, definitely want to get that checked out. Withdrawing from and avoiding social interactions, right? If you have a child that doesn't seem to make friends easily or they isolate themselves a lot, you may want to sit down and talk with them, see what's going on. And then if you feel like you can't do something as a parent, talk to their pediatrician. They can refer you to a psychologist or a therapist as well. If your child is hurting themselves or talking about hurting themselves, and also, if you have a child that likes to hurt pets as well, that is a sign of having a mental health issue. Having talking about death or suicide. A lot of times children don't understand death or suicide, so it's important that you have that conversation with them, especially if you. I've had few people in my family that passed away over the years, and I sat down with my son so I can explain to him what death really is, because children think that death is something that happens and maybe they come back, but it's important that you have that conversation with your child and explain to them in terms that they understand. They have outbursts and extreme irritability. Um, they have out of control behavior that can be harmful. And out of control behavior is if they like to throw things, if they like to kick, if they like to scratch. Pay attention to those excessive behaviors, changes in their sleep. If you notice they're sleeping too much or sleeping too little, it can affect their behavior. Like a child that doesn't get the proper amount of sleep, they can't function in school. And so if they can't function, they start to um, react, right? They start, maybe throwing things, or they can't sit down. They're getting up off and on. So pay attention to that. And they're also having frequent headaches. Um, if you notice your child is complaining a lot or they have a headache, you want to get it checked for toothache. It could be a lot of different reasons. Maybe they're dehydrated. Maybe they need glasses. Um, maybe they're not getting a proper sleep. So all those signs, definitely pay attention. If you have a child that they have some of them symptoms, make an appointment with your doctor. It's okay. Um, to be worried about your child, but we want to be able to get them the proper help they need as soon as possible to prevent anything long term. If a disorder is not diagnosed early enough, it can develop into something worse, and that's what we try to prevent, right? I know for me as an adult, a lot of these issues started in childhood that never got properly handled, and it's harder when you're an adult to deal with these things because now you have to go back and retract and figure out what was going on and heal, and the healing process is not easy. So if we can tackle it early on, we can prevent a lot of these issues, a lot of unhappy adults, right? Everything starts from a childhood, and a lot of us that suffer from a lot of different issues definitely could have been handled in childhood, but maybe our parents didn't know how to handle it then. So being aware, um, reaching out for resources because there are a lot of more resources available now, and being involved with your child, asking questions, especially when they're in school, and seeing how they are. For me, I noticed, especially with the pandemic, we had like Zoom schooling, or the option was iCyber. I found that my son couldn't focus, doing the Zoom, so I had to pull him out of there and found something that works best for him. So you find what works for your child. Also, my son has a plan in place at school. He has a person that sits with him, and to help him stay focused as well. And so if you need that for your child, those resources are available. Also, after talking with your doctor, you figure out a plan what works for you and your family. Everything doesn't work for your family. They do have medications for certain illnesses. If you choose not to go that route, they also have therapy as well. Me and my son used to be in family therapy. He also has a behavior specialist, and he has that TA that comes. He's in daycare right now because of the pandemic, and so someone will sit with him until his behavior can be under control. And it does take time to show improvement, but if you as a parent are consistent in your efforts, that child will see that. But you have to be consistent. Children look up to us, right? We are their examples. And so if they see inconsistencies in us, um, they won't be able to trust us the way that they need to. So make sure that you as a parent just try to strive to become the best parent that you can be. Not that you have to be a perfect parent. I think a lot of times we think that we have to be these perfect parents. Nobody is perfect, and then our children aren't perfect as well. And we have to keep that in mind that, it's okay for them to have a bad day, and it's okay for them to be sad. And then teaching them how to control those emotions. That's what I'm working on with my son right now. It's okay to feel these ways that you do, but it's not okay to, behave the way that you do that affects other people. And I think if you teach them that with the right tone, um, it'll be better for them overall. I think sometimes our delivery can affect the outcome, right? If you're raising your voice at somebody constantly, most likely they're not going to react the way that you want to. So when you learn how to speak someone properly, they'll react better. And sometimes you can't do it on your own, and that is okay. For me, I did everything that I could, so I reached out and got the help that I needed so that I could make sure that my son gets the proper education, for one, that he needs, and then reached out to my family as well for their assistance. It's okay, family is support, the community is a support, and it's up to us to make sure our child gets definitely the help that they need. Again, solutions would be family support, spending quality time with your child. If you notice that your child needs that, I know we're busy and we're work and we don't, we get tired and stuff like that. But set aside, at least 10 minutes a night with your child, especially if you're busy, can definitely improve their behavior. I noticed when I started to change, my son's behavior started to change, and it's working out for the better. And I'm scheduling that time. Exercise and food. So what we put into our body definitely affects our mood, especially as adults, but definitely in children. A lot of times, we give children sweets and junk food, as a treat, but that can cause and actually affect their behaviors as well. Dairy, artificial coloring, sugar, preservatives, and food allergens. Pay attention to what you're feeding your children, because sugar is one of those things, especially if your child suffers from ADHD, that can definitely impact their behavior. So slowly removing that, especially if your child is consuming large amounts of it, and we don't realize how much sugar is in things like those little fruit snacks and apple juice, even if it says 100% natural, it's a lot of sugar that they add into foods, and it's hidden ingredients they have add into foods. I know the dye yellow 5 and red dye is not good for a child with ADHD. It can actually make it worse. And so changing your diet can actually improve your child's behavior. That's what I took a step in. I started preparing my son's breakfast and lunch to make sure to do everything possible that I can as his parent to make sure that his behavior improves, that way that he can have a more productive day. 1 in 5 children suffer from mental health illnesses every year. That is definitely a big number, and we want to try to get that down and try to tackle it as soon as possible so that those children don't suffer. 9.4 percent of children aged 2 to 17, about 6 million, suffer from ADHD each year. 7.4 children suffer from a behavior problem, about 4.5 million. 7.1% of children suffer from anxiety, and then 3.2% of children suffer from depression. And we think that children can't suffer from depression, right? A lot of times we be like, what do you have to be sad about your child, right? But children go through things just like as adults, and they handle it differently. Um, we don't know why, we get sad. It's a chemical imbalance in our head, especially with mental illnesses. And so children can have them as well, especially if it's a hereditary. There is nothing that we can do to prevent that if it's hereditary. That's why I said it's important to pay attention to your child to see if they displaying these symptoms and get right on that. It's okay to be sad, especially children sad, that maybe they lost a pet or something happened to them that caused them to be sad. That's fine. But if it's over extended period of time, you gotta do something about that, and be able to be vulnerable with your child and let them know that you understand them and that it's okay for them to have those feelings, and then get them definitely the help that they need. I keep speaking about getting them the help that we need because it's important that we tackle this when children are younger, so that they can thrive and they can have the best life that they can. And if it goes undiagnosed or misdiagnosed, your children can suffer, and a lot of children do suffer in silence. Some children do commit suicide. I know a lot of us, we allow our children to watch YouTube videos. That is good and it's bad. Some people put subliminal messages in those videos that tell children to harm people, that talk about suicide like it's okay. And so we have to pay attention to what our children are watching, what they're listening to. I know me as a parent, I can do better especially with music, especially our conversations. We don't realize how much of information our children pick up by listening to us. I was having a talk with my son this week about a conversation I was having with my sister and my brother, and I'm like, where did you hear that from? Oh, I heard you. I'm like, oh, you can't close your ears. And he's like, no, I hear very well. So children are listening to us. And that's why I say it's important that we speak. One, we speak life into our children, right? If they do something bad, you know, address the situation, to let them know what they did and that is not acceptable. And this is the consequence of their behavior, and ask them questions of why they did that, and then show them this is what's going to happen. And it's important that you explain yourself and let them know that it's okay. But I try with my son to explain to him there is a consequence of his action. If he chooses to do this, this will be removed. If the behavior continues, all of this will be removed. And you want to definitely learn your child and figure out what's going on with them and watch the patterns, right? If your child shows repeated patterns of a certain behavior, you definitely know that it has to get addressed. And don't let it go too long without getting addressed. Yes, we have things to do. Yes, we need to, our life are busy as well, but we can't put our children on the back burner. They did not ask to be here, so it's important that we be as effective as a parent that we can. Children 2 to 8 years old are more likely to have a mental disorder, and boys are more likely to have a mental disorder than girls, which is definitely important to know. Also, things that we can do to prevent it again, addressing it, right? Doing the family support. Also, being able to provide a safe environment for your child. And that's again, allowing your child to come to you with their feelings and for them not to feel like they're going to get attacked. It's ways to communicate with your child without them feeling like they are afraid of you. And you don't want your child to be so afraid of you that they can't come to you, especially if it's issues that's going on outside of the home that's happening. If you provide an environment of fear, they won't be able to come to you to tell you when something is wrong or is bothering them. So definitely pay attention to yourself as a parent. Uh, Meditation is a form of controlling the child's behavior. I practice this with my son as well. They have like these affirmations on YouTube that you can allow your child to listen to, so they know that they are important. Um, Children are going through a lot more things that we realize, right? We think all they have to do is go to school and do work and listen and do their chores, but they suffer as well, especially this isolation. It kept them from their friends. They get tired of talking to us. We're adults. We don't understand their language, and they don't understand us as well. And being isolated from their friends kind of created some of these issues, and so we want to tackle them. We want them to let them know, especially right now, it's getting warmer outside. Allow them to go out and play safely, right? Just watch your children, pay attention to what they're doing, and get them involved in activities. Activities can increase self-confidence. It can increase better behavior patterns. If they're doing things that can take their mind off of their behavior. I know with my son, he likes to do things with his hands. If he is busy building or coloring and stuff like that, his behavior is lessened. But definitely mapping out a guideline and a routine for your child can help them prevent the behavior. And also, if they need to take a moment from themselves, that's okay. Allow them to have that moment for themselves and then come back and have that discussion about their behavior so they know, what's right and wrong. A lot of children don't understand the concept of right from wrong. We as adults sometimes don't understand that concept. We do things that we feel sometimes is right for us, but not necessarily right for everyone else. Just letting your child know that they are important and that they are valuable and that they feel love. And feeling love is the most important thing, right? Just because your child does a behavior that you do not like, never tell them that you don't love them. Never demean them, because after a while, that becomes abuse, right? If you're a parent that's constantly downing your child and telling them they ain't worth nothing, they're going to feel like that, and those feelings carry on as adults. And as an adult, they'll make decisions based off of how we made them feel as children, and we don't realize that. And if you're a person, an adult that suffers from mental health issues, think back to your childhood and how you were feeling back then. Did your parents make you feel loved or wanted and stuff like that? I know for me, I kind of didn't feel like that growing up, and it did affect me as an adult. And so you have to be able to navigate through the world like that, and it's a little hard. So as parents, we have time to transform and to provide a better life for our child just by changing, how we approach situations and stuff like that. It's up to us to provide our children with the best life that we can. Not that we have to be those perfect parents, but we owe it to our children to give them the love and the support and encouragement they need. And if we can't do it ourselves, definitely reach out. There is resources and stuff that resources available, therapists available, psychologists available. Reach out to your schools, reach out to your community, reach out to your family for support. I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in today. Definitely take into account of everything that I said. And if you have a child that's suffering from this, feel free to get the help they need. It's okay. Your child is not, different. There's nothing wrong with your child, but it's important that you make sure that your child can have the best life that they can. Make sure you visit my website, www.becomeyourc.com. Follow me on Instagram, Become Your C. Follow me on TikTok, Become Your C. Also on YouTube, BYC, Become Your C. Again, if you're interested in being a sponsor, definitely inbox me and let me know. And the message I have for this week is that whatever you want to do, do it. Whatever reality that you want, create it for yourself. Know that you are important, you're valuable, you're worth it. Fall in love with yourself so the world can fall in love with you. Till next time.